Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Matt Mandrgoc, the head of U.S. Public Sector at Zoom. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Troy, for having me today and appreciate the opportunity with you today.
Great to be speaking with you. Matt, I think it's probably a big understatement to say that there's been a lot of change over the past couple of years. In the past couple of years that you've been at Zoom, it really has transformed the way that work in and out of the government gets done. And so, just to kind of set some basics here before we get into the rest of the conversation, what are some high level thoughts on how the nature of work and the future of work has changed and evolved over the past couple of years?
Jory, it's been almost 4 years since I started at Zoom, and I've seen so many great ways people and groups have come together to solve problems, but also the opportunity to create the foundation for the future. If I could sum it all up in this one statement, it would be that we went through a time of unintended disruption to now an opportunity of intentional transformation. So why do I say an opportunity for intentional transformation? Instead of just putting solutions in place that may address the need, the work needs to be done to understand the root challenges to come up with these solutions. This is where technology and the customer experience, digital experience, and employee experience are coming together. As you know, it's so important that there's executive orders that were put in place around this to drive it. It was great to hear from the individuals from OMB around their focus around the customer and digital experiences with agencies and the high impact service providers in federal, and the progressing successes. Today, I look forward to discuss not only around the foundational keys for collaboration in a hybrid workspace, but the opportunities around the customer, employee, and digital experiences.
All right. Well, Matt, to dive into things here, let's talk a little bit about the hybrid workplace because we have seen agencies gradually shift towards this way of working. What do you see as some of the foundational keys to driving success in this hybrid workplace, having some folks work from home some of the time and in the office the rest of the time?
It's a great question, Joy. And let's focus on five fundamental keys, foundational keys around the collaboration. First, the platform must be secure. FedRAMP is the benchmark of a secure platform foundation. There's a need to provide granular controls and flexibility needed to adapt to user scenarios. Those controls can happen at the administrative level as well as the end user. We're fortunate that our Zoom for Government platform is FedRAMP JAB authorized with CJIS and HIPAA attestations as well as a DoD IL4 provisional authorization. What we're seeing in this, as you see more in what's going on around the security areas, a number of companies have to be really clear on how they're operationalizing the security components for our customers, not just having a FedRAMP platform, but really being clear around what does that security mean. The second, the platform needs to be extensible. Extensibility can really, interoperability between different parts of different systems can prolong investments through an agnostic hardware approach that really rejuvenates legacy devices or partnerships that minimize or eliminate additional connection costs while being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. I'll share some examples of some of these agencies' successes as we move forward. Third, the platform must be innovative. Standards for communication with features like breakout rooms, gallery view, noise suppression, and accessibility, which we will talk about shortly. Accessibility, agility, and innovation comes from a pure focus on the users by anticipating and responding to their needs. And innovation fuels quick adoption with easy to use and manageable capabilities, which led to an incredible growth of use cases by a wide set of diverse and creative government users. As all of this is needed without complex training, unnatural change management, or hidden adoption costs to help people communicate more effectively. Innovation accelerates the customer, employee, and digital experience. The fourth, it must be scalable. The cloud era makes most people think of scale in terms of data center footprint, redundancy, and reliability. While all this is needed to be securely built in that secure architecture platform, scalability focuses more on how the infrastructure delivers and anticipates user needs. This is important as organizations are scaling through this customer and digital experience as they're looking to engage with employees differently in this hybrid workspace, engaging with the customers out there, the constituents in their organizations to disseminate information from the government out there. And the fifth, it must be simple and work. And an intuitive workplace design fuels quick adoption with easy to use, manageable capabilities, which has led to an incredible growth of use cases by a wide set of diverse and creative government users. All this is needed without any of that complexity that I discussed earlier. And it's important because this simplicity makes it really simple for our organization to put out there for government users. Government users are able to quickly access information, collaborate, and have job productivity and training, as well as the constituents and customers that they're actually disseminating the information out to. So those 5 areas really create the foundational component of the workplace, but really set the foundation for that customer, digital, and employee experience.
All right. Thanks for breaking that down for me, Matt. Obviously, this is a lot for agencies to learn pretty quickly, and that learning curve can be a little challenging. What are some of the challenges that you're hearing from some of your agency customers?
The number one out there, Jory, is legacy systems that don't scale. It's hard. They say that to do the same thing over and over again and expect the same result. As this has evolved and we talk about people going home and working in this hybrid environment or coming back to the office, we actually have been very happy about people coming back to the office because they're able to have that full flexibility of a hybrid environment. And we'll talk about rooms. When we go into rooms, into conference rooms in a building, how they're not video enabled or limited enableability. There's non-flexible technology that doesn't enable or accelerate the user experience. That's the biggest challenge we're seeing across by these legacy systems, which limitate not only from a technology perspective or an innovative perspective, but also being fiscally responsible because they're costly to manage. The second is really around user complexity and interoperability. Everybody's looking, as I mentioned earlier, the extensibility, that interoperability being used, being able to operate different systems. And I'll give some examples about this in a little bit, about that extensibility. But how do you automate the processes? People are looking at that area where we start to look at, and I'll talk about AI in a little bit as well, where you start to automate AI chatbots, the opportunity to use customer experience, be able to show the complexity, that interoperability component that ties complexity back, and being able to get rid of some of that and automating some of these processes, which is really the biggest challenge that most people are coming from. And the third component is really one of the biggest ones out there as well. It's people talk about people, process, and technology, but what we really haven't integrated into this whole scenario around the workplace, as well as the new work processes and the people and the technology, is the culture. So many times I've seen across government customers, a lot of them have had a culture of video not being on, and that could be limitations on the technology, the type of solution that's being used. And in that culture, we're trying to create back the human connection. That's the biggest part about the workplace. It's not about just what technology you're using, but how do you create the human connection, whether you're at home, whether you're in the office, on the road, wherever it might be. And this big shift around the culture of people turning on the videos, being interactive. If you and I were sitting in a meeting and I made a statement and went across there, if I wasn't on video, I couldn't really tell what you were doing. But if you had sort of a confused look on your face, I would be able to say, Jory, you seem to have a little, you may have a question on something. Could you got to answer that for you? Here, that opens up that aperture and opportunity for you to actually ask that question and me to understand from that human connection what that means. So this is where that employee experience comes in, but also that same opportunity as you start to go out into the customer and constituent-facing engagements where they've been very successful. So those are the 3 main areas. We talk about legacy systems, end user complexity, people process, technology, and really the cultural shift has been there as we start to evolve into that. And as people are moving towards that culture change, they're trying to up-level, upskilling opportunity for training and things like that. Here's where that human connection comes, whether it being in any place, anywhere you are for that workspace.
All right, Matt, circling back to the customer experience executive order that you were talking about earlier, We've seen from some other folks we've had on with this series talk about the various components of that. Some of that includes the employee experience at these agencies, a digital first experience, improving that digital experience. And of course, we've had OMB share their thoughts on that recently. What are you seeing in these areas as far as the improvements that have been made and the improvements that need to still happen?
Yeah, it's another great question, Jory. You think about everybody does it a little differently. What does success look like to them? There are certain metrics out there, and there's others that are cultural aspects. So some examples we've done in US courts using translation captions, being able to capture those things in court cases. It has evolved. If you look across not only from a federal, but state and local government courts, we've actually helped organizations transform what they're doing in the courtroom, taking non-critical dockets, moving it to a hybrid environment to quickly get through those and focus the court and those individuals on the most important things that have to be either in person or be able to protect individuals for highly incarcerated individuals. Second is we had a large international organization tied, especially works a lot closely with the U.S. government. We did a 3-day event with them, which had language translation and sign translation across for the 3 days. Being able to have that flexibility in there allowed those individuals to have a truly inclusive uh, engagement and allowed them to be able to interact amongst these different individuals without any limitations from accessibility or language barriers. The third, we had another agency, the USDA, was getting out, disseminating information to the farmers. Now you look in there, there's low bandwidth environments in a lot of these different areas, but these individuals where our platform, the Zoom platform, really shines within a low bandwidth environment, allow these farmers to join into these different engagements, gather the most important information, and then really creates, more importantly, creates success for USDA by getting this information out to those individuals. The next is really around job fairs and training. So job fairs become, we're not looking right now just at the retention, we're looking at retention and recruitment, keeping individuals because the marketplace is getting very competitive. So in there, they want to create this hybrid environment and creating that customer or employee experience. But when you're recruiting individuals, you want to share with them that you are doing all of these things for them to have that hybrid work environment. Even though you're asking some to come back to the office depending upon the roles, you want to provide that maximum flexibility. In recruiting this, we're not thinking about what's happening right now, but you have to really look at, we're also setting the tone for the recruitment of the government worker of the future. Those individuals coming out of college or transitioning from industry into this. And then job fairs, showing that we talk about the customer and constituent experience. How do we make sure that as a government agency is using these forums to recruit, showing the best foot forward, the capability, they're using technology to engage them in a different way. And the last is around all hands, how they're disseminating information. It's not about setting up a conference call or just setting up a large meeting component to do this. How are you really making these interactive meetings, asking, getting questions on there, but putting in a secure platform to tie it all back? Now, you talk about those are a lot of the customer and some of it was employee experiences. But you also look at, and you tie some of that into your, both the customer, you think of an employee is a customer of yours at that area. But then you're also looking at, we mentioned town halls, all hands, being able to disseminate this information out there. But what we're finding is in a very simple, and it goes back to one of those 5 foundational components I mentioned earlier, the foundational piece is simplicity. So if you make it easy for individuals, but secure, make it easy for them to access, call into information and access it, it makes it much easier for them to actually participate and give feedback around what they're doing. So when you tie all those pieces back and you really tie it into the digital experience, the digital experience is tying all these technologies, all these things together. And again, it's not just say, hey, let's just throw this technology at it and this will solve the problem. What is the root cause of how you're trying to get this information? What are you trying to disseminate? What is the best experience you can give? Can you use interoperability between systems and technologies to actually share the best experience for those individuals? We're working on some really interesting things around HR and a different type of experience that people can have around training and how you track the experience. Again, moving not just to automate processes, but to really integrate it into the root core of what the agencies are trying to do from that process perspective, but be able to tie it back.
All right, Matt, lots of great points there, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll circle back to some other things here. My guest today is Matt Mandrgoc, the head of U.S. Public Sector at Zoom. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, on excellent, equitable, and secure customer experience, a closer look at high impact service providers, sponsored by Caresoft on Federal News Network. Welcome back to Excellent, Equitable, and Secure Customer Experience, a closer look at high impact service providers, sponsored by Caresoft on Federal News Network. My guest today is Matt Mandrgoc, the head of U.S. Public Sector at Zoom. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman. And Matt, picking up where we left things before the break, you were talking about accessibility and how that's a critical area for everything that we've been talking about in the federal space. How do you see this impacting all this transformation work?
Jory, accessibility is top of mind in government agencies, but it's not just a compliance checkbox when using a collaboration solution. It's an opportunity to open the aperture for customers and employees requiring accessibility to have a human connection, as I mentioned earlier. As agencies review collaboration solutions, accessibility and the customer and employee experience teams should have input if those solutions support accessibility and 508 compliance needs. Here are a couple of accessibility features that can be used by our government customers. As I mentioned earlier, sign language interpretation. View feature allows hosts to designate certain users as sign language interpreters so that participants can always see their interpreters in a dedicated resizable window, no matter who is speaking. Accessibility settings where you can customize the font size of chat and closed captioning in your accessibility settings. Keyboard accessibility to easily manage all workflows with just your keyboard. Zoom supports all keyboard shortcuts to navigate our features. Screen reader support for to use Zoom without a screen. Automatic transcripts that are automatically generated and synchronized to make it easy in search, view meetings recorded in the cloud. Even they have something simple as epilepsy safeguards. When flashing imagery that could be harmful for people with epilepsy are detected during screen share, the user's screen is automatically dimmed until a few seconds of non-flashing video is detected. Accessibility is ingrained in the Zoom platform. It's really around in that piece around accessibility, all those parts that we talk about technology. So where we talk about the interoperability, we talk about accessibility. You look at what they have around the access board, where every agency has an SES and a designated individual for that accessibility. Those things as we make technology decisions, those individuals in those customer experience roles really can have a really big impact on these technology solutions that are made. So they're making sure that they're addressing all of those, not just for the customers, but also for employees as well.
All right. And to circle back to a point we've been making throughout this conversation, agencies have been really hard at work with IT modernization for a number of years now. What kind of role does this technology modernization have in the kinds of customer experience we've been talking about, the kinds of employee experiences we've been talking about, and that digital experience that we've been talking about?
Yep. A couple of things here, Jory. Now you look at, I mentioned earlier around utilizing existing investments. There's a great opportunity about how you utilize existing investments, but at one point, how you divest from those. And we're seeing a lot of that happening from people moving away from an on-prem solutions to cloud solutions, which give you the most opportunity for flexibility, scalability, and innovation. So moving again, utilizing where you can use existing investments, but also knowing where you divest from those and tie back. So that is going to lead to helping you, I'll call it innovate, as I kind of mentioned, going forward on that. Really look at AI. And I won't talk a lot about AI here, but I'll share two pieces of that. AI is going to play an important part of where we are. But across the board, you look at that customer employee experience, look at AI bots, you look at customer contact center information. How do you automate some of those processes? AI is just an evolving opportunity for us to look at how does industry partner along with the organizations and the government to do this. Now, I can share with you, we have this in our commercial plan and our Zoom for Government is evolving. More to come shortly on that. But one of the two key points I'll make just from a Zoom perspective on I can talk directly to is on Zoom AI Companion is included at no cost for customers with paid services in the Zoom user accounts. The second component, which is important to really understand here, is Zoom does not use customer data to train Zoom's or third-party AI models. There's so much out there, Joy, around the AI piece and really how it ties back. It is going to play a critical, important part around the customer and employee experience and that digital experience. And really how AI is going to play across there is going to be an important, how we as industry partner with government to help them understand those root cause challenges to implement that. The third, as I mentioned earlier, was also low bandwidth. We see more and more, there's a digital exclusivity around people with high bandwidth in certain areas, low bandwidth in others. How do you create that? Because again, it opens up that aperture for recruitment of individuals. As I shared in my previous talks, in that environment, if I have somebody who lives in an area where maybe it's not a high bandwidth or it's a low bandwidth environment, but they have a certain skill set that the government may need, I may not need them to move to the DC area, but I could have them work in a rural area which has low bandwidth, but creating that platform to allow them to have accessibility, again, digital inclusivity around being able to interact with those individuals and have that human connection. And so those are the kind of the main areas we talk about from an IT modernization. And again, the last piece I'll mention around that is that whole evolution moving from on-prem to cloud. Now, there's also a blend, right? There's sometimes not an either or. In that, you want to be able to have the opportunity that we mentioned, people going back to the office, creating rooms. How do you make these rooms exclusive? So inclusive. So how do you start to look at those individuals out there? If I'm sitting in a meeting, the old way of a hybrid or a conference room would be I'm sitting at the end of the table and it looks like I'm sitting way far away. Here, there's opportunities to use the technology to actually create a very inclusive, as if everybody's sitting next to each other, looking at each other and talking. So this is a great opportunity for them, for government to actually partner with industry to get visibility to the challenges and successes of agencies, but the opportunities for potential interoperability solutions to solve problems. There's an opportunity to partner proactively with industry, because we have great visibility to the challenges and successes and interoperability solutions to solve problems. A great example of this is a agency that has Zoom Phone with us. And in there, they wanted to create a self-service modeling for thousands of their employees to actually provision theirs. So in that experience, we created that extensibility, interoperability with ServiceNow and their FedRAMP platform. So now they can take this ServiceNow experience along with the Zoom Phone experience, be able to go in, digitally go in and set their parameters up to actually provision their own phone and not have to have the integration with a whole bunch of IT people helping. This really helps take the pressure off of the IT teams, which are really dispersed and having to do a lot of technologies, but the opportunity for them to actually create this digital experience, creating it much easier for employees to get up and running and be able to have that real inclusive experience they have around there.
All right. Well, Matt, we've covered a ton of ground here, but as we wrap things up, is there any final takeaways you want to leave for our audience?
Thanks, Jory. I'll share 3 key thoughts to create a successful hybrid workspace and the customer experience, digital experience, employee experience. First is to intently listen to employee and customer feedback. Organizations need to truly embrace a bottom-up management and not only listen to how your employees and customers are feeling, but also act on that feedback to continuously improve as a government, increase their retention, and attract the government talent of the future. And again, also inclusive and creating inclusivity. The second is to find ways to promote equitable and mutually beneficial connections for all parties. Hybrid work really requires guidance on how to creatively connect with one another in an effective way, no matter where employees are working. The third is provide the right platform and supporting technology to facilitate a frictionless experience for all employees and customers to enable productive collaboration and engagements. In order to give guidance on how our employees can creatively connect in a hybrid environment, it requires the right platform and supporting technology to facilitate those connections. It's really critical to find the right products, tools, and features through a provider who can enable that and enable and accelerate the customer, employee, and digital experiences.
All right. Well, Matt, all great points there, but I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank today's guest, Matt Mandrgoc, the head of U.S. Public Sector at Zoom. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search HISP. That's HISP.